And the Oscar goes to Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Hey everyone, this is Ben, just stopping in real quick to talk about this week's episode. In light of the Oscars this past weekend and all of the wins that they tallied up, we thought what better time to re-release our episode on Everything Everywhere All at Once. We talked about this last season with Mike and Darren from the Action Filmmaking Decoded podcast. It was a great conversation about a great movie, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks, everyone.
Dreams are something you have to believe in. I almost gave up on mine. To all of you out there, please keep your dreams alive.
Welcome to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where Destiny brought together three friends to enhance each other's cinematic journey by watching three new movies in a series of themed rounds. There is no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode, as all film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy! Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Three Films and a Podcast. My name is Ben Lawhorn, and as always, I am joined by Tyler Beck.
Yes, as always, here I am.
As always. And Matt Weiler, who is taking a break from fighting Joe Butchapaki.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. Taking the time. Get us in your schedule.
Great pronunciation, too, right off the bat.
Joe Butchapaki, yeah. I almost forgot about that.
For those of you new to the show, allow me to welcome you to our movie club. And if you're returning, welcome back to the movie club. We're happy to have you all here. Tell your friends and family and enemies. You can find us everywhere at 3 Films Pod. And you can check out our merch and Patreon and all that stuff at 3filmspod.com. But with all that out of the way, and with the movie club theme in mind, we want to welcome back some guests that were here for our action movie draft. We have Darren and Mike from the Action Filmmaking Decoded podcast. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for coming back, even after my horrific blunder last time. I appreciate you giving us a second chance here. But yeah, thanks for being here. Tell everyone about your pod.
Thank you guys for having us again for a second time. This is great. Our podcast is very centralized around action filmmaking. So we interview stunt performers, stunt coordinators, action directors. Now that's a thing, which is crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, just directors in general of action movies. And we kind of talk to them and break down some of their work and their films in a very, very, I say detailed way, but we can go even more in depth.
I love it. That's awesome. And you guys maybe talked about getting into making some films coming up here. So that's exciting.
Yeah. We've been taking a little bit of a break on the podcast just to produce some of our own work.
Nice.
So we've been working with a lot of stunt performers in New York and trying to get some action pieces produced with them. It's awesome. Pretty cool because some of them have listened to our podcast before. So they're like, oh, you're the guys. And now we're working with you. It's really
That's
cool.
rad.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's amazing. Yeah. I'm so glad that you guys are back here again. If anyone, those who listen to our action movie draft know that I forgot to hit record until halfway through. So we did this really weird, chopped and screwed Dirty South version of just people saying what they picked until we got halfway through. So
we made it work. We made it work.
Yeah. It
was a
worked.
moment when we realized.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I look back on that video and it's just like, oh my God, looking at myself, how do I tell people this? What's that scene?
We made it work.
Yeah, we made it work. It's like that scene in The Simpsons where they zoom in on Ralph, the moment that Lisa breaks his heart, you just see it breaking. That's what I felt like just watching myself. It's like, holy shit, that's right. The moment right there.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think let's get into today's episode. Today's episode is technically a little pod, which is usually an offshoot from what we do. We've done movie drafts, as you guys know, as you guys have come on for our action movie draft, emergency recast, things like that. But today, we're kind of just going to do a different version of our regular pod. We're going to talk about one movie in particular, and just kind of go deep on it. Maybe not hit every segment we normally do, but this felt like a movie that was worthy of talking about. Very recent. This is probably the newest movie we've ever talked about on an episode. But yeah, we're getting into Everything Everywhere All at Once. It is the A24 film from Daniel Scheinert and Daniel Kwan, and it stars Michelle Yeoh, Ke Huy Quan, right? Is that right? I'm getting messed up. Okay. All right. Starring Michelle Yeoh, Ke Huy Quan, Stephanie Hsu, Jamie Lee Curtis, and James Hong. It was really good to see James Hong because I don't know the last time I saw him in anything, but he was super rad.
Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda, yes, probably it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I loved this movie. I think this is one of those examples of a movie that's like about a very specific particular thing that somehow ends up relating to, like, everybody can relate to it. You know, I listened to a lot of pods with Daniels and they kind of said the same thing. Like, they're just like surprised when everyone's like, oh, I related to this. Like, really? Like, I just like, okay, you know, it's like Chinese immigrant family who runs like a laundromat and stuff. But I think there's so much here that we can all kind of relate to. The synopsis of it is: an aging Chinese immigrant is swept up in an insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes, connecting with the lives she could have led. So yeah, I just want to start out, I guess, like hearing everyone's experience with this movie with Daniels. I mean, it sounds like, you know, some of us have seen Swiss Army Man. I think the Turn Down for What music video will just be like in one of my favorites of all time. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I watched
or not.
that like 10 times. After.
I loved it. Yeah, that was another. So that's the first thing I ever saw of theirs back when it came out, and I was like, "What the fuck is this music video? Like, this is insane!" But I love it so much. I will definitely be playing at least part of that throughout this episode. But just want to kind of hear your experience with their movies and their projects, and this first time watch with Everything Everywhere. Who wants to kick it off? Mike, do you want to go first?
I don't think I had much of a relationship with them. I mean, I knew them. I had seen the Turn Down for What music video many years ago. I had the name Daniels stricken from my head. Didn't really think about it since. I knew of Swiss Army Man. I saw the trailer. I thought it looked really good, right up my alley. I love the absurdist concepts, stuff like Taika Waititi does with Jojo Rabbit. But other than that, I don't think I've really seen any of their other films. Daniel Kwan maybe did something that I saw. I forget what it was though.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
If that sounds vague, it's because I really forgot.
If it sounds vague, it's because it is.
I mean, they're primarily like music video guys. Like, that's kind of
they started in that,
where they
right?
came from.
Yeah.
Which I think also plays well into this
yeah.
movie, you know, with a lot of the DIY with effects and everything like that. So,
shout out to David Fincher, who also started in that
exactly.
realm and then moved to movies later.
Spike Jones, yeah, for sure. A guy I'll be talking about later, Michel Gondry, tons of awesome music videos there. So, but Mike, like, you saw this in theaters? Obviously, I'm assuming. Like, what was your first experience with seeing this movie?
I mean, before that, I remember seeing the trailer, and let me just say, A24, their whole demographic, that is me. They have a singer. I've been in that fan base for quite a while now. I saw a meme one time. It's like, all men turn 20 years old, and then they pick one of these brands to base their entire personality around. There's like ESPN, and one of them was A24. I'm like, that is me.
That is
not
me.
the Grateful Dead brand. It's this one. But the trailer was just incredible, and I feel like when we talk about Marvel movies being great, and some people hate on them, they really are genuinely great. Sometimes though, if that's the only kind of movie you see, you forget the scope and the breadth of what films can be and what they can do, how they can challenge the form and tell different stories. And we think about the special effects, the craziness, but also just some of those fundamentals. Why do you cut from here to here? That is really what makes something fundamentally genius, not just the big flashy stuff. Although the trailer was very flashy, it just seemed like this movie was built for me. And then after I saw it, it absolutely was. And not just in a way
you were
where
speechless.
I was speechless. Yeah, which is why I keep rambling about it. I mean, like Darren and I both, what do we love about films? The one thing that we have in common, the action, the martial arts, right?
Yeah.
The Martial Club guys, Brian and Andy Lay, who did the choreography in this film and started it as well. They've been on our radar for so long, and seeing them in this film was just a huge mind-blowing moment. It's like we're seeing our friends on the big screen. So between the action, the martial arts, the Asian American narrative that's being shared here, and I work in civic engagement for Asian Americans as my day job, so I'm all about it. And then seeing a writer put a story with so much thematic resonance to that crazy experimental sci-fi concept of a plot was just, that is everything that I love about movies. Right there in a quick 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was all there. How about you, Darren?
Yeah, with the Daniels at first though, I think we touched on Turn Down for What, the music video.
Mhm.
I actually didn't know they did that, and then after like I watched this movie, I went back and I was like, oh shoot, they did that music video. That's so crazy. And then rewatched that music video. That music video is like absolutely nuts. Like his they got a lot of dick movement, you know.
Yeah.
Her boobs are like everywhere, and like it's just it's insane. Yeah. But yeah, and then I remember watching a short film a while back called Red Ball that they did, and it was a short where the Daniels were actually in the short where Daniel Kwan tries to prank the other Daniel. I forgot what his last name was, but he tries to prank him in that he like tries to like fart in his face or something like that when he's sleeping, and then the guy wakes up and his foot accidentally gets stuck inside the other guy's asshole, and then that's literally what the whole film is about. But they made it super emotional, and you really feel for them. And then at the end, Daniel Kwan disappears into the other Daniel's body. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
It slowly sucks him in.
I'm telling you, that's their whole thing. That they're like, what is the dumbest possible thing we could premise off of, and then turn it into something that's like emotionally impactful and worth watching.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, man, why do I feel like this? This is crazy. But yeah, that was probably like my first interaction with the Daniels, and obviously Swiss Army Man. And then coming into this movie, I was already like a huge fan. But yeah, after coming out of this movie, I was like, I turned to my friends because I watched this with Mike and a couple other of our friends, and I was like, "This is like the best movie I've ever seen."
Seriously,
like this might be the best movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then they all turned to me and they were like, "Yeah, honestly, this might be the best movie we've ever seen too." It just has everything in it, you know, hence Everything Everywhere. You know, action sequences, comedy, emotion. There's some parts that are kind of like horror-esque or thriller-esque, I would say, where she's running away from Jamie Lee Curtis's character. I think that was a little bit more of like a thriller sort of thing there. But yeah, just everything in one movie. And I feel like the way they tied it together with the story, essentially the movie is about like a mom and her daughter and them connecting together, right? So that's how they tied all these different pieces together. But it was just fascinating to watch all these different realms and how they put those all together. Even like the rocks. I think I talked about this with Mike, the scene with the rocks, and they're just talking and the subtitles are coming up. That's something that I feel like if you pitch to a studio, like, oh, we're going to have 2 rocks and they're talking and then, you know, they're going to have subtitles. I feel like they would never agree to that.
Totally.
But it's only because, like we said, A24, that something like that is possible. And any of their crazy ideas are able to be put on screen in that kind of way. I was just really impressed by this movie. And then I had to go see it a second time with my girlfriend. But yeah, honestly, amazing. Martial Club, like Mike was talking about. I was literally telling Mike, like while we were watching the film, I was looking over, I was like, dude, that's Martial Club. The moment he stepped out of the elevator. Brian Lay was like the security guard. I was like, that's Martial Club. Like shit's about to go down. Like the moment I saw them, I was like, shit's about to go down. And like their butt plug scene was incredible.
Just unreal.
Dude.
Yes. Yeah.
So
and he also knows I love fight scenes that have absurd plots to them.
Yeah.
So like something they're fighting for like some stupid reason. And like that's absolutely what they had in this movie. So
all over the place.
Crazy.
Like all the to tap into the different multiverses and stuff like that. It was pretty cool to see that.
Such a clever way to do that. Like the way they have the key to each multiverse be a weird thing. I thought that was really clever. I am a lot like all of you. I didn't have too much known exposure to. Do we call them the Daniels or just Daniels?
I
think they told someone in like a podcast one time that they didn't want to be called the Daniels because they didn't want to take the name Daniels. So I guess that's why they're just called Daniels.
Yeah, because like a film by Daniels.
Yeah.
Whatever we call them, I had no known. I'd seen the Turn Down for What thing. I knew about Swiss Army Man. I'd seen like pieces of it. I knew what it was about, but I didn't know who they were. And so I went into this having seen the trailer for it, I think it was in No Way Home. The Spider-Man premiere is when I first saw the trailer. And sort of like you, Mike, I was like, oh shit, yeah, that movie, I already know I'm gonna love it. Like,
yeah.
You can just put me in the seat now, and I'm gonna just I don't even
play it right after
say
this.
no more. Say less, A24. I'm already there. Like, I've already got my seat. And it's interesting because when I went in to see it, so I saw it a week or two ago, and it's a little unfortunate because I went to a theater that supposedly it's sort of like Alamo Drafthouse, in which they'll bring you food to your seat. They have like waiters that come and take your order, which is great. But the problem is they were actively taking orders for the first like 15 minutes of the movie. And there was like a solid minute and a half where the waitress was literally standing in front of me, taking the person next to me's order. And I was like trying to look around her like, hello. And so anyways, that was fine. But so the first like 15 minutes, I was a little distracted. There was a person sitting in my seat that I had to have not like a altercation with, but like a confrontation. Like, you're in my seat. He didn't want to move. Turns out he was trying to sneak into the movie, which I guess is my karma for having snuck into so many movies as a younger person.
We've been
so I was in like honestly kind of a weird headspace. I was so excited to see the movie. And then for the first like 15, 20 minutes, I just couldn't quite get into it.
Yeah.
And then as the movie went through, objectively, I knew I loved everything that I saw, but I kept waiting for that like emotional hook or that impact. I kept waiting for the feeling that I would get that would make me respond to my previous Clubhouse question in a specific way, right? Like I was waiting for the moment that would make this movie be an answer to my own Clubhouse question. And to be honest, I never quite got it. Like it never hit me. It never hooked me. I didn't like, I'm a crier. Like I cry in a lot of movies. I'll cry at commercials. You know what I mean? Like I'll cry if, and like the human interest pieces during sports games, you know what I mean? Like I'm a softie. And I would like, and I was surprised that I didn't get any of those moments from this movie. And as I was trying to think about it, because I left the movie and I was like, yeah, that was a 5-star movie. It was perfect. I don't even know how to describe it. I think everyone should see it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever seen, but it like nothing about it like impacted me. And so I was trying to think like, was it the hype that got me? Was it the weird experience at the beginning? And honestly, I think what it comes down to for me was it was just such like an assault on my senses.
Yeah.
Right. Like there was so many things happening, and like I understood what was happening, that the way that they deal with the multiverse and explain it and kind of throw you into it, but give you enough information to keep up, and the clever way in which they, go throughout each multiverse. I understood all of it. All of it was great, but it was just like, it was literally everything everywhere all at once. Yeah. And I don't think I could quite comprehend it. And I think it's something that like necessitates a second viewing, which usually is a pet peeve of mine. I'm like, why do we keep making movies that I have to see twice? Like, there's too much to watch. Like, just let me understand in the first one. But for this one, I just feel like it's going to be a gift that keeps on giving. And hopefully at some point maybe I'll get that impact I was looking for. But again, I loved it. Everything, I was like, objectively, I love this. There's nothing about this that I don't like. This is perfect. It's the best thing I've seen all year. But at the same time, I didn't have like a Marriage Story moment, Ben.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a moment that's like, there was tons of things that stuck out and I'll remember forever, but there's nothing that like got me here, which was, I was a little disappointed because I was really expecting that. So I think 1, expectations got me. And then 2, just the blast of sound and light and everything. And
there's one scene that's literally seizure inducing.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think they refer to themselves as maximalist directors, which is 100% what this movie is. Yeah. It's just like everything that we have, we're putting into this. But yeah.
And having said all that, I think I rated this 5 stars on Letterboxd, and it's instantly one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. But it's just an interesting experience for me because it just didn't. Usually, when that happens, it's because it got me here and not so much just up here. You know what I mean? But it was great. I loved it. I can't wait to see what they do next.
So if you're listening to this episode and you're still with us, I want to do a slightly soft refresh before I get into my view on this. I have no prior experience with Daniels. And so it sounds like if you're familiar with Daniel's work, this is going to be right up your alley. You're in a good spot. You're probably, having heard everything up to this point, you're probably in. If you're like me, where you're not familiar with Daniel's work and you hear stuff like farts and butt plugs, this might not sound like your cup of tea. But I'm here to tell you that it is. You should still go see this movie.
Totally.
It's a whole lot more than farts and butt plugs. Bill Hader once described himself like why no one likes to smoke weed with him. It's because he said it's like smoking weed with your dad. Well, I'm that guy, but with movies. Like, you don't want to watch movies with me because I'm like the prude. It's like uncomfortable to watch certain things with because it's like, oh, he's judging me for enjoying this. And so there's moments in this movie that I roll my eyes, I shake my head at, but like honestly, like this movie was the full package. Kind of what Darren was saying. It's like it has everything. I don't think I've seen a more complete movie that has literally everything that checks every box. Unlike Tyler, like this movie had me weepy at several different parts.
Oh, I want that.
It is so sweet, and the way that they build it up and the writing of it. And to Darren's point about the rocks, like I don't know how, like the pacing, like you're not hearing anything. The pacing of like the text on the screen, the subtle like movements of the rocks, and that dialogue is just weird. It's like, how is a silent scene with rocks making me cry?
Yeah,
you can like hear it. Yeah, you're gonna hear them talking.
You can, yeah. And so it's unlike in any movie experience you've ever had. I can say that with certainty. Like everyone you talk to who's seen this movie, like sure, you're gonna see callbacks to different things that you've seen in a movie. But this complete package is unlike anything you've ever seen. This is, as Tyler said in his Letterboxd review, it's why we go see movies. This movie is why we go to the theater and why we experience it. It's why we have our podcasts. Like, these things need to be talked about. People need to experience this movie in the format that it's given us. You said all of that.
All that, verbatim. Well, and I think people are doing that because like we're in week 4 of the release and it had a 0.4% drop from week 3, which is like unheard of for any movie ever. You know, it's just like the word is spreading, which is great because I think this movie is worth it.
And I also want to say, like, Thursday we're seeing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and
already it's coming out.
I know that's what I was saying. I was like,
here,
it's
buddy.
The great part about it
May
is
7th, right?
Doctor Strange is going to be the 3rd best multiverse movie I've ever seen. And it'll be the 2nd best multiverse movie I've seen in like the last 8 days.
Right.
So
seriously,
wonderful timing from A24. Just brilliant stuff.
Yeah,
because now there's no way we don't compare Doctor Strange to Everything Everywhere.
True.
Yeah, exactly. No butt plugs in No Way Home, but we'll see what happens in Spider-Man 4. Sony, get Andrew Garfield back in it. Let's go.
You don't know that.
Well, I mean, it's funny because like the butt plugs obviously are like played for a joke and stuff like that, but also like I've never wanted people to get them so bad because there's like a story element behind it. Like it's not just funny. You just like, like, oh, they need to do that in order to like tap into this version. Like, I hope she can get there before they do. It's like, it's played genuinely. And it's kind of like same with Swiss Army Man, where like they know what they're doing is absurd, but it's played so sincerely that you cry, some of us, but you cry when there's like 2 rocks on screen. You're like, why? What is happening? Like subtitles.
They really tread that line. Oh, I do feel like, between like it working and it really not working. Yeah. Like they're really on that fine line right in between. And they nail it completely.
And
I found there was one moment that didn't totally work for me ever so slightly. I don't know if y'all had anything that didn't work for you for this movie. Amidst all the praise, for me, it was just the hot dog finger joke.
Oh, okay.
And then, Joy, the daughter, using the dildos as nunchucks. No problem with dildos on screen. I think more movies could probably do better if they had more dildos, especially as nunchucks. But I just feel like it was kind of quirky for the sake of quirky's sake. And when all of the other visual jokes in the film work with a level of wit and then set up and payoff, those two things just felt out of place. Like you're just throwing them out there for no particular reason. And the whole hot dog finger universe or multiverse, whatever you want to call it, being used to also flesh out her relationship with the Jamie Lee Curtis character, that was perfect. That is where that story element was really, really powerful. But then also they just had hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
I feel like it wasn't as good as some of the other.
That's interesting. I actually didn't really think about this until you just said it. But I do remember thinking this in the theater. At the very first, when they present the everything bagel, that's the one time when I was just like, like that didn't land for me. At first, it grew on me. And I went back and looked at my Letterboxd review. I used that in my review. Like I said, this movie is, it's everything you want to see in a movie wrapped up into one bagel, right? Like by the end of the movie, the bagel grew on me and I bought into it. But at first I kind of felt like what you were saying. I was like, they're just making it silly for the sake of making it silly, which didn't really work for me. But then it sort of it ended up working for me, I guess. But it's interesting that you made me think about that, because I wouldn't have thought that something didn't work for me until you made me think about it a little bit. So I appreciate the critical analysis there.
Yeah. It is a point of like ridiculousness, but with a purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just for no reason at all. And like we said, the butt plugs had a purpose behind them. Everything did have a purpose behind them. So I get what you're saying about that too.
Yeah. And the hot dog fingers was like absurd for sure. And just like super silly, but also it's like one of the most tender moments is when like you see this foot come up and like caress her face, and it's like, that's what you would do. Like that's what would happen in this world. And it's like, that's what I mean. We're just like, it's played so sincerely, even as absurd as it is. I'm just like,
and how they court each other with the fingers.
Yeah. Like on the piano and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. Like I get your point 100%. And I think I found myself actively in the movie thinking like, there's part of this, like, I feel like maybe shouldn't work for me, but I'm just like on board for everything, like this is
in Too Many Cooks fashion, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The fact that they keep on remixing that joke over and over.
Exactly.
They commit to all the bits in this film.
Exactly.
I do have to say that Rakakuni was one of my favorite.
Oh my God. That was so
did
funny.
Daniels do the Too Many Cooks bit?
I don't think so.
I don't think
they
so.
did.
Oh. Okay, I thought maybe I was like, that would have just blew my mind. Wouldn't have surprised me, but that's what I love that video. It's so good.
Yeah.
Underrated. That's an unsung gem.
Yeah.
That's an
For sure. There's another pod I listened to. It used to be called Slash Filmcast. It's called the Filmcast now. And one of their hosts, David Chen, wrote a review on Letterboxd, and it's just like, someone who sees movies all the time, and his last line in there is like, it may be my new favorite movie of all time. No joke. And that's how I felt like leaving the theater. It's like, I just honestly cried for like the last 20 minutes. We'll talk about the scenes and stuff like that. But so like, I honestly was just like, I was in tears for the last 20 minutes. Just really hit me. But everything worked. I loved it. I do another podcast called 24 Minutes of A24. And so I got sent the trailer and I was like, this is a good sign, because for me, this is a movie I want to see, even if I wasn't talking about it on a podcast, which is like when you start doing movie pods, it's like, all right, we're watching that for the pod, or we're doing this, whatever. But I was like, man, even if I wasn't doing any podcast at all, I know I'd want to go see this. And like, I think it kind of lived up to it. Michelle Yeoh was amazing. I just want to talk about her for a second, because she's like had such a career. I mean, she's amazing. I think Super Cop was like her big break. I think the first thing I saw her in was Tomorrow Never Dies, James Bond. And it was like one of the first ones, I think, where the Bond girl held her own, with Bond. It wasn't just like a sex pot kind of thing. And I thought that was great. Obviously leading to Crouching Tiger and, Memoirs of a Geisha and some of the more American movies that I think a lot of us like saw her in for the first time. But man, she was amazing in this movie. I just wanted to talk about her for a little bit. People have maybe more recently seen her in Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings. There's a Netflix movie called Gunpowder Milkshake, which is like, it's fun.
Oh, she's in that?
Yeah. And it's like, it's a fun movie. So I don't know. I just kind of want to talk about Michelle Yeoh for a bit, because she's Michelle Yeoh. She was just amazing. And I think her performance in this obviously like just keeps everything tied together. And I think she was wonderful. So I don't have like a question in mind. I just want us all to talk about Michelle Yeoh for a second. So
yeah, I got no problem with that.
Tear it up.
Yeah, I'll jump in first here because I mean, honestly, like I don't really know. I mean, Lord knows I can ramble on forever, but I don't really know what I can really say about her. All I could really do is echo what you said. Like, she knocks this thing out of the park. Like, this movie's
so good,
inventive and beautiful and cool and funny and scary and heartwarming and all those things. But I really do think it falls apart if she doesn't carry it as well as she does. I mean, all the performances in this movie are incredible, but the way that she's able to totally realize different characters in each different timeline and like, granted, theoretically speaking, one person in any timeline is essentially the same person at their core, but you can really see a difference. Like when she's famous Evelyn, or when she's hot dog finger Evelyn, or when she's our timeline Evelyn or whatever, like she feels like a different character each time. And I think that's pretty incredible. And I'm realizing like I've seen her in some stuff. I didn't really know that I was seeing her, but it really makes me want to go back and visit some of the other stuff that Ben, you just rattled off, or even just like looking at her filmography. Like I've seen Crouching Tiger and 10 Rings and all that stuff, but I definitely like, I need to see Crazy Rich Asians and catch up on a lot of other stuff she's in. Cause she really did blow me away. I was like, and to be honest, I didn't realize who she was. Like I have famously bad recall. So I was like, who is this person? I've never seen her before. Like I need to know everything about, and then, it turns out I kind of do know who she is, but yeah, just kind of echoing what Ben said, she's just phenomenal. And I really do think despite all the amazing things about this movie, it falls apart pretty quick without the strong work from Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, definitely. Totally. Wasn't she on like an interview or something and she was crying because something about how, now people can finally see her acting abilities and see her in this light and in this way.
This is something I've been waiting for a long time. That's going to give me the opportunity to show my fans, my family, my audience, what I'm capable of. To be funny, to be real, to be sad. Finally, somebody understood that I can do all these things.
Yeah. And I feel like this is like a great film for her. Like, I mean, she has been in the American market, but this like really like shows what she can do.
She's in a new stratosphere now for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. I mentioned the Story Break podcast from Freddie W a while back. They did, it's another movie podcast. It's defunct right now, but they would do different premises for crazy films, then do like an outline for it. But they had one called The Chosen Mom Movie, and it was basically saying, why are all the chosen one kids like 12-year-old twerps? They're not smart, they're emotional, they got hormones all over the place. Why are they saving the world? It should be a rough and tumble mom who's seen some shit, who's ready to throw down.
Yes.
And that's exactly what this movie is. And I feel like, and Ke Huy Quan as well is such a great example of this. This is also a film that's telling the story for and creating roles for someone who does not get those front man or front woman spots traditionally in Hollywood. It's a woman, it's an Asian American woman, and it's an older Asian American woman.
Right.
And she still kicks ass. She's someone who obviously has the martial arts credentials and actually hasn't really trained martial arts like solely. She has a dancing background. She's I believe a ballet dancer. And then she just does a little martial arts when she goes on to the martial arts films for the choreography. And at this point, she's basically a martial artist. Like she has credentials. Yeah. She's so good.
Yeah, I mean, you could fool me. I would have thought she'd been studying for her entire life. Like she's incredible.
Yeah. All the scenes that she did with Andy Lay, I saw behind the scenes that she was doing a lot of it herself during that whole fight, which is crazy that she was keeping up with them because Martial Club moves really fast.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Shang-Chi as well.
Even with a little bit of training, like incredible. Yeah.
She was awesome.
One thing I realized when I was watching the movie was how well she acts with her eyes as well. We always say Tom Hardy acts with his eyes really well, and that's why they always put a mask on his face of like he's Bane and but and Dunkirk I think as well. But yeah, Michelle Yeoh, like so much emotion with her eyes, and like even that last sequence with her and Jobo Tabaki, her daughter, like that was crazy.
Man.
Like yeah, that close up shot, yeah, just you could tell so much, and I feel like I've never really seen her in that way before, but she really took it to the next level, especially with how absurd this film was too. It shows as an actor how willing she is to just jump into the the deep water and just experience what it is to just act and be in that moment. It's not really about crazy. I mean, it does have crazy special effects and the concept and whatever, but just the idea is just so crazy. And for her to act so well, going along with that, I give her big props.
Sure. we have a segment coming up that we'll talk a lot more about that, but this movie took a lot of buy-in from all the actors and actresses, and they got it. Everyone bought it, and everyone was all in, and they definitely needed that to pull this one off for sure.
It was kind of crazy knowing too. This was like originally intended, I think, for Jackie Chan, and then they realized, Daniels was like, actually, Mike, let's try the different dynamic, and then switched it over. But like you mentioned, it's a GQ, I believe, interview on YouTube, and they're kind of going through her career, and then at the end, she's talking about this movie, and she gets like emotional because she's like, it was so great to be given something that can show people everything I can do. I can be funny, I can be dramatic, I have the action. But like we talked about, it's like there's like an age thing, obviously, in Hollywood where it's like, all right, like it's almost like once they're 35, it's the mom role now, and it's like you're out of here, whatever. And it just gets worse as you get older. You know what I mean? It's like there aren't roles written for you or anything. And along those lines, it's also why Ke said that like he left Hollywood, because after doing Short Round, in Temple of Doom, and then Data in Goonies, I think you're just kind of getting that same thing, and then just like left and went got a film degree, and I guess he was like a first AD for Wong Kar-wai, which is kind of rad, learning like to be like a stunt coordinator and everything.
Wow.
But man, this is his first like audition and role in 2 decades.
Whoa.
He blew it out of the water.
Fucking nailed it. Like he was so good. I mean, we'll get into it in a sec with our elevator pitch, because mine definitely involves him, but he was just like a revelation to me. It's like, why hasn't he been acting, And I guess it was Crazy Rich Asians that he saw. He's like, I think I want to start acting again. Like, I think there might be roles for, for Asian men now that like aren't, especially for him, like not like being stereotyped like he was when he was a kid.
Right.
And he's just like, cool, I want to just like, let's do this again. And I just like, man, I don't think there was a better role for him to make his return in. I think he was fantastic.
Definitely.
It's so trippy too to hear people who really achieve that level of their dream older. I feel like the narrative most people have in their heads, and for reasonable reasoning, if it doesn't happen by like 25 or 30, it's kind of you throw the notion out of your head. But to see someone be that age and then really hit that mark is pretty incredible.
It's inspiring.
For sure. Like you're saying, that connection to the Michelle Yeoh not having those kinds of roles, it's even crazier to me that he couldn't act at all. He just had to drop out. And it seems like he really loves it. Like that's your dream, and he was doing it, and he was doing everything right, and still it just didn't line up until it did. Which is great.
I can't wait for whatever he's got next. Like I'm stoked.
I think he's doing a Marvel miniseries or a Disney Plus miniseries.
Oh, is he really?
Oh, no way. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. That'll be
crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna save all my Ke Huy Quan stuff for later.
Yeah. No, I totally understand.
Yeah. I mean, about her, Tyler kind of alluded to this. Like, she carries this movie. She does an amazing job, and I think it's cool that. I mean, you ask a lot of American audiences like their top favorite like Asian actors, and honestly, just because of the way the landscape has been our entire lives, there aren't many that they can even name as a household name. And it's just so cool that she was given this opportunity, that the movie's done this well, that she's the face of this, because people not only are going to recognize her in things going forward, but they'll also recognize her in things going backward. And it's just such a cool opportunity, and it's amazing to see what this movie's doing.
For sure.
Yeah. It literally baffles my mind how in the behind the scenes, she was like, I had no clue what was going on the whole time. I'm just clueless or whatever. And the whole cast was like, you are not clueless. Like you worked really hard for this. Like you're way too humble about what you did here.
There's so much like behind the scenes stuff that's amazing. I know she talked about Jamie Lee Curtis was always on set, and she's like, "Why are you out here?" And I guess Jamie Lee Curtis said, "Like, I've never learned anything in my trailer. Like, I learned from being out here and watching. Like, oh, that's really like for someone who's like honestly like Hollywood royalty, you know, like with both her parents like being huge in Hollywood, just as someone who's still just like, yeah, I want to continue to learn. And I guess Ke put in like a lot of work, which is pretty rad. But yeah, I think without a doubt, Michelle Yeoh is amazing as always. But she had a really fantastic supporting cast and people we haven't even really talked about yet. So I want to go to a segment now we call our Apollonia Award, which is, you know, in spirit of Purple Rain and Apollonia kind of like stealing the show and the thing that you remember from that movie. We want to give out our Apollonia Award to our favorite supporting character. But before that, I got a new sound mixer, which comes with buttons that has like preset audio things in here.
Oh, shit.
So
Awesome.
I want to play one that I loaded in here just for our Apollonia Award. Okay.
Okay.
Well, for starters, you have to purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
What?
All right. Perfect. We're here.
We did it.
We're going to purify ourselves in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. So yeah, let's give out our Apollonia Award. Darren, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I believe I put down Ke Huy Quan for that. So now we can finally talk about that. Yeah, he was incredible. I think like you guys said, this is his return back to acting. And I've heard in behind the scenes interviews that he tried really, really hard. He took this very, very seriously. He developed different, I guess, spirit animals for each character that he had. So it was almost like the original Waymond that we met was a squirrel or something like that. And then the other one that he met, the other Alpha Waymond was like a fox or something like that.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and then the one where he was in the rich guy.
Yeah.
He was like an eagle. So there were 3 different versions of him. So he made a very, very clear distinction of like what he was going to do for each. So I really enjoyed hearing about, I guess, his process of sort of preparing for that role as well. I just keep thinking about that sequence where he's peeking over the file cabinet and it's just his eyes. Oh my gosh.
It's so good. I love it.
Yeah. And you can really see the transition between Alpha Waymond between when he switches over back to his normal self.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. All of that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really shows off his range for not acting, you know, for such a long time. He can do a lot.
He tapped right back into it.
Yeah. Really glad that he's back. Acting again.
Well, I have a feeling we'll still be talking about him for the next little bit. So, Mike, who's your Apollonia winner?
My not real Apollonia winner is Randy Newman, who played the raccoon.
Raccoon. Yeah.
I think Darren told me it was Randy Newman who voiced that character.
Yeah, I know. They were like, dude, that makes it even better.
That's amazing. It was fantastic. I love how it's all practical too. It's very obviously a little puppet.
Yeah. I actually heard that they didn't originally get Randy Newman, but they wrote it as a joke at first. So they were like, oh, Randy Newman. It's so funny that we're putting Randy Newman in there. And then apparently one of like their PAs or something or someone that worked on set knew was like a relative of Randy Newman's. So he brought Randy Newman in to like see the screening of the movie. And basically his whole family pressured him into being in it. And he was just like, he was eventually peer pressured into saying yes. And then
sort of like Vin Diesel with Groot.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. And it's amazing. Just when you hear that's Randy Newman. Now I go back and I listen. I'm like, yeah, that totally is Randy Newman.
I didn't know that till just now. That's exciting for my next watch.
I think my real answer is Waymond as well.
Yeah.
Just the heart and soul of the film. If everyone in the world, as well as in this movie, were more like Waymond with his whole emotional outlook on the world, I think it would be a much better place.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. I'm sure more Waymond stuff will come up later.
For sure. Matt, who ends up on your Apollonia?
I mean, to not pick Waymond, I will have to go with my girl, Jamie Lee Curtis, man.
For sure.
Oh, yes, definitely.
She just...
Do you see these? You don't get one of these unless you've seen a lot of bullshit. Excuse my French.
She did not have to bring that to this role at all, but she did.
Yeah.
She went above and beyond. She went along the ride with Daniels,
Totally.
went along with went along with it, and man, we reap all the benefits. That was insane.
Yeah. I love hearing how passionate she was. It's incredible. Just like the whole idea that she just showed her body out there and just put it out and didn't really care. I was like, props to you for that.
Well, Ben mentioned that she's like, I mean, she's in Hollywood royalty, but like she's still bringing it at this age, she's not slowing down at all. Like, she's using her age in her roles in the right ways. And so
she's adapting perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like JLC and Ke Huy Quan were like, I was kind of like juggling between the two. I don't think you can go wrong with either answer. I think, Matt, you're 100% right. Like, she really did bring it here. And I think, like we kind of talked about earlier, you really needed to for this movie. Like, this movie took a level of buy-in for all the performers that's really special. And that's something that she's always been able to do. Like, she's always been able to be silly in a way. Like, she takes a lot of risks. Like, she could look really dumb on screen doing a lot of the things she does. And she just never does, because she full on commits to it. And I really appreciate that about her. And, to see a glow up for my guy's short round, like we got from then to now, it's just, I've always loved Temple of Doom. It's like, I think it's pretty universally thought of as like the least of the three. You know what I mean? Like, most people don't really love it, but I've always loved it. I've always loved Short Round, like acknowledging that he's a problematic caricature. I still find a lot of like heart and warmth to his actual character, despite the problematic elements of it. I thought he was really fun. I loved his dynamic with Indy. So to see him go from that to this and have it be something that's like a genuine character for him to play, I think is really special. So it's real hard not to go with either of those, but for the sake of variety, Stephanie Sue. Yeah. I mean, she was great. Her switch from like the sweet, like bashful daughter to like mega villain and a believable one. And not only like, she wasn't scary in the way that like, actually she was kind of scary in the same way that Anton Chigurh is in No Country for Old Men, in the way that she's just like steadfast and resolute and has no fear. She plays it in a way that's more silly and more expressionate, like expressive and colorful and all those other things. But you get the sense that she's just always coming. She's always on your heels. She's always on your footsteps, and she's genuinely terrifying and genuinely sweet all in the same movie. So like everyone really brought it here. So yeah, what were you about to say, Darren?
Oh no. I was just going to mention that scene where she walks out with the pig. She really owns that.
For sure.
That's the first time you see her switch, right? And yeah,
she was great. I mean, I guess that role was originally Awkwafina, but due to like scheduling conflicts, like she couldn't do it. But I think, like,
I'll be honest, I'm glad that Stephanie Sue did.
Yeah,
I like Awkwafina, but I don't know.
No, I'm with you.
I think I would have seen too much Awkwafina if she had done it.
Yeah, it's a little bit too overcasted, I think.
For sure.
And in that kind of role.
I had only seen her in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is, obviously set a long time ago. So this was like my first, modern take on her. And I thought she was wonderful. I just want to shout out a couple other people. Jenny Slate. I did not even know she was in this, that she's like the annoying lady with the dog. So it was kind of cool. Yeah,
Jenny
exactly.
Slate.
So that fight scene was great.
And I love that she's kind of Mona Lisa.
Mona
Lisa Saperstein.
Exactly,
like I kind of like that.
I have done nothing wrong ever in my life.
I know this. And I love you.
I love you too, Daddy. Money, please. My money.
And then James Hong, like kind of in a smaller reserve role, but I mean, still like he just commands whenever he's on screen. People probably know him best from Big Trouble in Little China and Blade Runner. Like now he's doing voices for the Kung Fu Panda movies, but he's great as the grandpa. And then like the scene where
he feels like he kind of feels like a young guy in an old man's body.
Yes, yeah. Especially when he like comes to, and then he's like, "You've got to kill your daughter right now. You have to do it." Like that whole thing's like, wait, what the fuck? What's going on right now? Like that was intense. But I don't know. It's hard not to go with Ke on this. Like my experience with him was just Data. I've never seen Temple of Doom. So it's really cool to see him in this. I think his performance was amazingly strong. Obviously, Jamie Lee Curtis was great, but I think he's just really huge here. That's who I'd give my award to. And as we transition to the elevator pitch, which is what we do when we're trying to convince somebody to see a movie that we're talking about.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
I'm just going to jump in with mine really quick, get out of the way. Mine is also with Ke, and it's that first elevator scene where we see him snap to the Alpha Wayman, you know, and like he's like behind the wheelchair pushing James Hong, he's just like sitting there, and then he just like kind of snaps too, and he's like, just like, you know, telling all this stuff like, I'm not the Wayman, you know, I'm from another dimension, just all this kind of stuff. And it's just like this little like body movement, and then he just like, he goes back to the other one. It's like, wait, what? Like that was nuts. That whole first sequence with him to like taking her into like the storage room. And then I think just one of the best fight scenes of the whole movie is that fucking fanny pack. Like that fight scene was so good. It was amazing. It's like, and it's a fanny pack, you know, and just like
with the rocks.
Exactly. Like the little thing they do where he just like leans over to the fish bowl and just like pulls, like, I don't know. I loved it. Yeah. It's kind of a cheat of an answer, but basically I loved kind of our first introduction to the Alpha Wayman character. I think he did so good with that. So
when he chews the chapstick, that's when everyone goes like, yo, what's happening?
Yeah. And that's
supposedly
like,
I've heard that's actually chocolate, but
dude,
movie magic.
It's crazy because like we talked, I watched Jackass Forever with my girlfriend the other day, and I was like, what do you remember about those movies? And I was like, the worst one for me is from the first movie, and this is before we saw this. And I was like, it's when they do like the paper cuts, like with the manila folder. Like I've never got that out of my mind. Oh yeah. And then like a week later we go see this, and he's just like sitting there like trying. I was like, no, how did I feel that? How did I manifest this? And I have to like sit here and watch this now. He's like trying to give himself a it's like, it's insane though what they make them do to make them go to the other multiverses. Like, you know, the chapstick, the butt plug, the giving yourself a paper cut, all that kind of stuff. Shoes on the wrong feet. So I don't know. Very cool.
I wonder how much he actually did when he was doing that.
Yeah, or if they like put some sort of like, plastic,
God,
whatever in between there.
That's brutal.
But so gnarly. But I'm kind of curious, if you guys had an elevator pitch, what scene would you show people to convince them to watch this movie?
Yeah, I think Mike already knows. It's the butt plug scene.
I don't blame you, man.
It's gotta be the butt plug scene because damn, that was probably the most fun I've ever had in a fight, like watching a fight scene in a while. And like I was saying in the beginning of this podcast, I really love when ridiculous scenarios sort of like set up fight scenes, and it just makes it that much better. So you have this whole dynamic with Michelle Yeoh and Andy Leigh's character where they're fighting, and I think she smashes his earpiece or whatever. So like it starts kind of funny where they're just like hand fighting a little bit. And then they have to, and then actually I do remember when they first show the butt plug. My friend Richard was saying, dude, that totally looks like a butt plug.
Oh yeah.
And then we were all, and then we were all like, dude, like, why are you so gross, man? They would never do that. Like, stop talking about that or something. They'll do it. Yeah. And then we saw that, and it was just like, it came full circle.
Yeah.
It's just one of those amazing examples of like a setup and then a payoff later on. And I've never seen a fight like that absurd. So I absolutely loved it.
Because in that moment, I remember in the audience, you could feel the ripple of people realizing what was about to happen. Because like people, you could feel like people like, it was like a visceral electricity that you could feel, like people like, oh shit, they're really,
like, oh shit,
they're really going there.
Yeah.
Well, when I was watching it, like,
a great build up.
I got the joke. You get the joke of it because they're like trying and missing, right? And they could have ended at that, and it's funny, right? What you don't expect is that they're actually going to, you know, accomplish the mission and then have a 3-minute fight sequence, you know, with the devices hanging out.
I just remember we like in the movie theaters, we were literally like, we were literally like just getting up out of our seats and like looking at each other, and we're like, dude, I cannot believe this is happening right now. This is insane.
It's honestly what's kept me from recommending this to my mom, because like, she's like, what did you see? I was like, I saw like one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. Like, what was it? Like, I don't know if it's for you. Like,
I know.
Like,
my little sister was like, I told her this is the best movie I've ever seen, and she was like, I have to go watch this, and I was like, yeah, but just keep in mind there are things that you know.
I mean, to Matt's point, like it's not like throughout the whole movie, and like Matt, you talked about this earlier. which is, and again, like they use it, I don't know, with a purpose. There's an intent. It's not just like a gross out gag or anything like that. Were you going to say something, Matt? I think I cut you off.
No. You go ahead. I was going the same direction as you.
Cool. And there's a level of absurdity to it, even though it's happening.
Yeah.
And we see it enter, but we don't see it enter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like,
it's crazy because how could you, like, you think about like Jenny Slate, like swirling a dog around like that. And you're like, how could it get any more ridiculous than her doing that? Right.
Yeah.
And it just keeps stacking and growing on top of that. And that's what I love. And that scene just finishes in like a crazy, absurd way. But yeah. I also love how Andy Leigh's character has a bigger trophy and like he has a smaller one. Oh my God.
And just like when Jamie Lee Curtis introduces it, it's like, you see this award? You know how much shit you got to put up with to get one of these? Like, oh, so good.
Shout out to Joseph Lay doing the previs for all that. Marshall Club again.
And
all of them are incredible. And I'm so glad that they get a chance to, go from doing YouTube videos to doing something like this. It's just incredible.
For sure.
Yeah. And tone wise, this was exactly them.
Yeah.
Right up their alley. Yeah.
That's awesome. Mike, what's your elevator pitch?
I think I'm going to go a little bit more low key with mine. I'm going to go towards the beginning of the film when she first starts to be verse jumping and she gets a glimpse of her sort of movie star life.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where it cuts back to her meeting her husband, and then it's a version of her life where she didn't meet her husband. And I think as society in general, we always look to parents and specifically mothers and expect them to put family first, and that is the only thing that they should be emotionally invested in. And then I think there's a moment in everyone's life that comes unfortunately late in everyone's life where you realize that your parents aren't just your parents, they're also their own individual, and they're someone's son or daughter or otherwise. And that was such a to me heartbreaking character realization of she has things that she wish she did differently, and there's an enormous level of regret. And seeing someone take the multiverse concept and apply it in that character way of this is what could have been. It seems so obvious, yet no one has really done it in this perfect way before. So I think that's it for me.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's a great choice.
Yeah, just being able to see, like, I think that was one of the craziest parts of this movie as well. Like just being able to see full lifetimes of events in just a series of like seconds, what they're able to do, like, and tell, story wise with just like montage sequence. I thought that was incredible. And obviously lining up different paths and how that would have taken them in different directions. They set up like, oh, she's running, and then her father, and then they arrive there, and then what she does with her career. So it's like very easy to follow, but it's very intense the way they do it.
For sure.
Yeah. It's not like any other flashback sequence I've seen before.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, to your point, like the way they even map it out, like on those devices, it's like this is if they made a bunch of different decisions. This is like a faraway universe, and this is if they just made like one little teeny decision. It's not so different, and like you get sort of like it helps the audience kind of conceptualize like, okay, so if things went really bananas earlier on in her life, it could have gone way off the rails over here, and have hot dog fingers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Damn. That sequence though made me really sad for Wayman's character. I remember looking to Mike in that sequence. I was like, no, damn.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That one got me for sure. Matt, what's your elevator pitch scene?
So my favorite parts of this movie are the more emotional parts of this movie, but my brand for elevator pitches is more like, what's the most bananas thing you can show on the screen. Now, I'm not going to show anyone the butt plug scene. So mine would probably be the Jamie Lee Curtis staircase scene.
Oh, dude.
Just you get a glimpse of just this. It's like, what is Jamie Lee Curtis doing flying through the air, with that expression on her face in slow-mo. And then what's this like versing that's happening with, Michelle, like what's going on here?
Yeah.
And so I would use that scene to say like, hey, if you like this, there's a whole lot more of this, and it's awesome.
That's a great choice. I noticed in the credits they thanked the slow-mo guys, and I think they have one of those phantom cameras that shoots like 10,000 frames a second or something like that, because That's what felt like that scene was. It's just like super slow.
Exactly.
Like, I loved it. That was a beautiful, beautiful moment. Tyler, what's your pitch?
Well, Matt has a brand for elevator pitch. I have a brand for elevator pitch. I usually pick something not spoilery, but I also really like to pick things that would make no sense out of context just because I think it's funny. It's just a little joke for myself that I get to have and to hold. So I would pick the rock scene the first time we see the rocks. You guys did a beautiful job of explaining it and describing why it's so impactful. So I'm not going to go too much farther into it. I will note that during that scene, you could have heard a pin drop like the next theater over. Yes. And I was like, I had a moment, I was like, I had so much respect for the people I was in the theater with because it's a full theater. I'm in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. It was Friday. It was 7:00. Like there's a million things that could have gone wrong in that moment and ruined it. And I almost ruined it for myself, appreciating that it wasn't being ruined. Right?
Yeah.
So, and to be honest, like I wouldn't actually show that scene, but it was the moment in the movie that hit me the most for all the reasons that it's trying to do, and then just my own personal experience, just appreciating that we all collectively were experiencing this, and it's a really weird premise. It's a really strange things happening, something we've never seen before, and it's really impactful. I guess that would be my answer, but to be honest, I had a hard time with this question because I couldn't. I just need to see this movie again. So my elevator pitch would just be like, let's watch this entire movie, and then we'll go see this movie again so we can really figure it out and really appreciate it, because I really do feel like I need a second viewing to really appreciate it. And again, maybe it was my mindset, maybe it was the weird experience I had watching it. But my real answer is just the movie itself. Like this movie, there's not a frame in this movie that's not inventive or new or awesome. So, pick a moment, watch that, and then just go see the rest of it, I guess, would be my real answer. But the rock scene was just inventive in a way that's like, it almost makes you mad because it's so simple and it's so silly, but so effective. It's just like, man, these guys really did it. They
so
really
good.
fucking did it, man.
Well, a great place to see this movie for the second time would be at our drive-in double feature.
Hey.
Look at that segue.
One of your better ones.
Sponsored by a good friend of the pod, Adam Driver.
Thank you, Adam.
And we are headed over to our Adam Driver drive-in double feature.
I just had sex. I'm about to eat nachos. It's the greatest moment of my life.
Where we get to basically pair the movie we're talking about, Everything Everywhere All at Once, with another movie and kind of pick the order they go. And I feel like this would be a good way to wrap up the pod, is just to kind of figure out what our double features would be. So, Darren, do you want to go first? Mike, do you want to go first? Who wants to throw out their double feature?
I will let you guys go first on this one.
All right. Mike, do you want to go first?
I feel like I'm going to pick a somewhat obvious one, which is Crazy Rich Asians.
Perfect.
I think on a meta level, it's such a perfect dovetail. It is, slight half step precursor to the resurgence of Asian American film and Asian Americans in mainstream media. You got the Michelle Yeoh connection. Yeah. And then you also have, literally footage of her at the premiere of Crazy Rich Asians intercut as one of those quick montage moments in this film.
Yeah.
And then you also have the Ke Huy Quan point about, hey, I was away from acting, this thing that I love for all my life, until I saw that film. And that's what got me to put myself out there and then land this role for Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I think that's cool. It's a pretty good one.
That's a really great choice.
And you get to pretend that Crazy Rich Asians is just a different timeline from the movie.
It's canon.
Yeah.
An extended timeline.
Exactly. I love seeing that red carpet footage from Crazy Rich Asians. It was so cool. Tyler, what's your double feature?
So kind of like you said, Mike, you thought yours was a little on the nose. I think mine is like incredibly on the nose. But I genuinely love the movie Ratatouille. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies. It actually might be my most rewatched Pixar movie.
Oh, nice.
So I would probably watch Ratatouille. I would watch Ratatouille first, just in case anyone in the crowd hasn't seen it. And then, if there's kids there, they can go to bed right afterwards. And then we'll go straight into Everything Everywhere All at Once, so that already incredibly funny joke will land even harder. Because I don't know about you guys, that's the hardest I laughed in the movie.
Oh man,
I was floored. I was dying.
This movie is the full package. You wouldn't classify this as a comedy but the moments that are funny are like super funny. And I can't remember the last comedy where I like laughed out loud, like on my way driving home.
Yes.
And thinking of Rakakuni, it was just so funny.
It's so dumb, but it just
I laugh every time I think about it.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Rakakuni in the cage.
so it's a great double feature, like you said. Like it doesn't really make sense on the surface, but like it pays off once you watch everything.
Yeah. If you haven't seen either movies and you're going to this drive-in double feature, you're like, what did Adam Driver do to me? Why is he
exactly? Why
is he
bailing these two
this
movies?
Theater?
Matt, what's your double feature?
So I have an answer and then I have an honorable mention. My answer, kind of in the vein of Mike's answer, is we had a great mother-daughter Asian North American story in Turning Red recently.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of similarities to like the relationship and sort of the dynamics there. So for the kids, I'd show Turning Red, and then I would show Everything Everywhere All at Once. So bring your moms, bring your sisters, bring your daughters. It's going to be a good night.
Yeah.
My honorable mention would be Eternal Sunshine for a Spotless Mind.
Oh yeah.
Great one.
So if you're just kind of like that sort of like destiny and relationship theme there.
I love it. I think it's a great choice.
Charlie Kaufman, shout out.
Yeah. And Michel Gondry, the dude knows how to make surreal films. So that's sweet. Darren, you got a double feature?
Yeah. So for my double feature, I was thinking about it. I'm going to have to say Lady Bird.
Lady Bird, is that your given name?
Yeah.
Why is it in quotes?
I gave it to myself. It's given to me by me.
Because we talk about those mother-daughter dynamics, and that whole entire movie is literally all about mother-daughter dynamics.
100%.
And I feel like it does all of that really, really well. So to pair two movies together and have those two back to back, I think it's definitely a very emotional ride. But yeah,
totally. Yeah, Lady Bird is one that I did get that emotional hit, and it was a really good in theater experience. I saw it with my girlfriend at a cool theater in Portland, and we don't see a lot of movies together, so this is a double feature that's gonna feel nice and warm and nice, very nice.
Yeah,
to
yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah,
you know, Matt, I think you mentioned Eternal Sunshine as your honorable mention. My honorable mention was going to be The Science of Sleep, also from Michel Gondry, just kind of the surrealist like movie. But my pick is going to be In the Mood for Love from Wong Kar-wai. I think that was like the inspiration for the famous Evelyn, especially like that back alley scene when she's talking to Wayman and says my favorite line in the whole movie when Wayman's like, it sounds wonderful. I would love to do nothing more than taxes and laundry with you for the rest of my life. Like, that's like when I just like fucking, I was done after that. It's like, Jesus Christ, it's like the most
trying to make all of us cry on here, Ben.
I've ever heard. And I was just like, it was crazy. I loved it so much. So I just want more people to see In the Mood for Love. That was a recommendation from someone I went to school with. She found out I hadn't seen any Wong Kar-wai. She's like, watch Chungking Express and then In the Mood for Love. I'm like, all right, I will. So that's what I would pick. I'm hoping we'll eventually get around to a Hong Kong round on our show, because I think that'd be a great movie for everybody to see. So yeah, that's what I'm going with, is In the Mood for Love, just to tie it in with one of the multiverses there. But Darren, Mike, thank you guys so much for coming on here. I appreciate you giving us another shot. I hope we did okay this time. We'd love to have
that was
you back.
great. Amazing.
This was such a fun movie to talk about. But yeah, do you guys want to do plugs one more time? Let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. So you can find us on all podcast platforms. Our show is called Action Filmmaking Decoded. You can find us on Instagram, which is where we do majority of our engagement, at Action Filmmaking Podcast. You can also find us on essentially every other platform at Action Decoded. So that's Facebook, Twitter, even TikTok, which we're not too active on, but it's there. We're there.
No, I'm the same. We technically have one, but I haven't posted it in a while, that's for sure. But yeah, thanks again. We will have all those links in the show notes, so please go follow and support them. We appreciate you guys coming on. Can't wait to have you guys come back. You can find us everywhere at 3 Films Pod, and wherever you're listening to or watching this, like we do the video on YouTube, and I think Spotify plays our videos as well. Then everywhere else that podcasts are at, you can find us. So yeah, thanks again, you guys. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you so much. Bye.
why? No matter what, I still want to be here with you. I will always want to be here with you.